All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? What's going on? It is springtime outside, so that means we have spring football going on, courtesy of the United Football League. Week three is coming gone. We're transitioning into week four. But before we get into week four, I got the latest and the greatest from the United Football League ready to go for you right here on the Mark. Let's go.
On the Mark with Young Mark is brought to you by the Real to Sports Podcast.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of On the Mark, the part of the Real to Sports podcast, and we kick things into high gear and we bring you the latest and greatest in the world of football outside of the National Football League. I am your host, yours truly. I got some Week 3 UFL news and highlights to get to you. But first, before we get to the UFL, we're going to start things off in the world of college football. So we got some news that was coming out of Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Tennessee Volunteers have parted ways with their former starting quarterback, Nico. I hope I'm saying the last name right. Amalavea. Nico left the program after disputes about his NIL compensation. Currently, Nico was brought in. He just completed his true freshman season, led Tennessee to the college football playoff, but was only making about $2 million a year in NIL. He wanted more. Sources are saying that he was asking for about $4 million. And in order to get that $4 million, he was holding out of practice and allegedly even threatened to sit out of Tennessee's college football playoff game this past season if he did not get his higher compensation. Eventually, Tennessee said enough is enough, and they parted ways with the quarterback, with head coach Josh Heupel saying that no one is bigger than the program. This issue was bound to come about when the NCAA allowed players to be paid for their name, image, and likeness. There was no salary cap set on this, so it was pretty much free spending. However much NIL money your school had or had available to them, the higher they could offer to play players to come there. People said that Ohio State literally put together the best roster that money could buy to win their national championship, and it worked out for them. In this case, in Tennessee, it looks like it didn't work out. I'm all for players getting paid to get their money, especially when you're putting your body out there on the line like that, playing football. But me personally, I guess I'm just old school, not trying to put my OG Q-Dog hat on for a second, but it's like Deion Sanders once famously said, man, you play good, then they pay good. People seem to forget you have to play good on the field first. Nico wasn't bad last year by any means, especially for a true freshman, but he didn't put up the type of performances and the type of numbers that made you say, hey, he should be making double what he's making now. Teams have limited NIL budgets. It really just depends on how much their alumni and booster club donates to them for them to get players. So if you're already getting a large slice of the pie, don't be greedy and ask for more. You're in a sport, whether it's high school, Pop Warner, professional, college, whatever. Your number one goal as an athlete should be to win a championship. It shouldn't be fame. It shouldn't be money. It should be to compete with your teammates to win a title. You had an opportunity to do that, and you chose to throw it away and potentially walk out on your team just because you wanted to put more money in your pocket. That's very selfish, and that's not the type of quarterback or the type of leader I would want on my team. Like Coach Heupel said, nobody is bigger than the team. Moving right along to the United Football League, to the professionals. Oh, man, we had some highway robbery going on down in Alabama last Friday night. It was in the Friday night football game. We had the king of spring, Luis Perez, a.k.a. the host favorite quarterback of all time, going up against the Birmingham Stallions, who were looking to rebound after that tough loss they took in D.C. to the D.C. Defenders in Week 1. And Arlington loses a heartbreaker. With 26 seconds left in the game, Birmingham took the lead and scored the game-winning two-point conversion thanks to quarterback Matt Corral. To be honest with you folks, this game was pretty much a snooze fest the first 58 minutes of the game, but then business picked up late in the fourth. There was a fumble on a punt return that gave Birmingham life. Then it was about 30 seconds left. Matt Corral threw a pass in a double coverage, and it was intercepted. I was getting ready to text the host about it, getting ready to troll my friend. And then, hold on, the command center buzzed down and said, let's take a look at that play. Turns out there was a false start penalty on Birmingham's left tackle. And on any level of football, whether it's the NFL, college, high school, whatever, a false start penalty is a dead ball penalty. So it means the play stops immediately. So when replay reviewed it and saw that anything that took place after that penalty was null and void. So that wiped out what would have been a game-sealing interception for Arlington. And again, like him or love him or hate him, Matt Corral wins football games. He took advantage of his second chance after that interception was wiped out, and he played pretty sharp late in the fourth, threw some pretty passes, some accurate balls, threw a nice touchdown to the tight end in the end zone to get the tying score. And like I said, he scrambled to get the go-ahead 2-point conversion. From the Arlington side of things, despite playing an extremely clean and disciplined game of football for 90% of the game, they didn't really commit any penalties, didn't really have any turnovers. But late in the game, during crunch time, when it mattered most, that's when they started to make a lot of mistakes, and that's what ultimately cost them the game. Sam Cannella had a fumble. There was a fumble on the punt return that turned into second chances for the Stallions, who cashed in and got the victory. Birmingham, they played really sloppy most of the game. They had 7 penalties for almost 100 yards in just the first half alone. There were some bad throws by Matt Corral, and they had absolutely no running game. I don't know where that championship running back stable was gone in Birmingham, but they have not shown up yet this season. Arlington showed flashes on offense, but couldn't put drives together. And then Birmingham's defense, I give credit where it's due. Birmingham's defense is definitely nasty. They are elite, especially on that front four and that defensive line. They embody the bend but don't break mentality all night long. Every time Arlington got to a third down or needed a play to keep their drive alive, the Stallion defense shut them the hell down. Going forward, the question is, does Matt Corral keep his starting job? Despite the less spectacular play, one fact remains: the dude wins. So it's going to be interesting to see if head coach Skip Holtz is tempted to put in Case Cookus, or if he continues to roll with Matt Corral, who's proven that he can win you some football games. Moving on to the next game, we had Houston and Memphis. This game was somewhat competitive, but not the best game in the world. It was the lowest viewed game of the weekend. But I will say, on a positive note, it is amazing what a quarterback change can do for a team. For only the second time ever, and I hate saying this, but for only the second time ever in the history of the United Football League, the Houston Roughnecks have won a game. They went 1-9 last year. This year, they're off to a somewhat better start, picking up the win in week 3 to go 1-2. They finally set down Anthony Brown. Thank God. Anthony Brown was not the best quarterback when he was out there. He was making a lot of horrible decisions, very hesitant in the pocket, didn't know what to do when he had the ball. They set him down, put Nolan Henderson in the game, and boy, did he come to play. He looked confident. He looked control of the offense. The team fed off of him, and he played with a lot more confidence, using that word again, than Anthony Brown ever did when he was in there. Coach Johnson confirmed after the game that Nolan Henderson will be the starter going forward. Houston wins a ugly game, 18-17. Got pretty good late. I will say that. Late in the game, when Troy Williams took over for Danny Etling, not Danny Etling, I'm sorry, E.J. Perry, getting ahead of myself there. When E.J. Perry was benched, he got benched in the third quarter after he threw interceptions on back-to-back plays, including a pick six. They benched him. They put Troy Williams in the game, and Williams, like his counterpart Henderson on the other side with Houston, Williams extended plays with his legs when he needed to in order to keep his team in the game. But in the end, it came down to Houston's defense applying pressure. They got a crucial stop when they needed it most. They rushed Williams from the A-gap, and with pressure right in his face, he missed a wide-open running back that would have won the game for them. Very interesting to see if Nolan Henderson can make the most out of his opportunity to start going forward, seeing if he can help turn Houston's season around and see if they can win more than one game in the season. For Memphis, they played like a smart, balanced, tough football team throughout most of the game, and even had me thinking at one point, if they can keep this up, they'll be the ones representing the USFL conference in the title game and not Birmingham. But whoever is playing quarterback for them, they can have nuclear meltdowns like we saw on Saturday. Back-to-back interceptions when the team has all the momentum in the world is never a good thing if you're a QB. Moving on to the next game, man, we had San Antonio going on the road to Ford Field to play the Michigan Panthers. The Panthers won a thriller against a much-improved Brahmas team, 26-23. One word to describe this game would be physical. If you're a spring football veteran like me and the host, then one thing you know that you loved about the USFL was the hard-hitting style of football that they played, and that feeling was alive and well in Detroit this weekend. San Antonio seemed to be feeding off of their new offensive coordinator, Coach Pardee, who took over not only play-calling duties for the offense, but he took over as interim head coach for this game because head coach Wade Phillips is out sick. And for Coach Pardee to be a first-time play caller on any level of football, he looked phenomenal out there. The offense responded. Kellen Mond played the best football of his pro career. But before we get to San Antonio, let's talk about Michigan for a second. On Michigan's side, pretty interesting. Despite being listed at number 2 on the depth chart this week, quarterback Danny Etling of Michigan, he got the start on Sunday, and he immediately regretted it. Shortly after the game started, he took a monster shot in the first series of the game, and he was quickly ruled out, and Bryce Perkins took over. Perkins was very dynamic with his legs, and aside from a horrible pick at the end of the game, he was accurate through the air. He finished the day 17-23 for 193 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and 1 interception. Speaking of that interception, shout out to number 15 on the San Antonio defense, Jordan Williams. He's a middle linebacker from Baylor. He had a beautiful 85-yard pick six. He jumped the slant route that Bryce Perkins was trying to throw, picked it off at the 15-yard line and ran it back to the house for a touchdown. And that interception return really kept San Antonio in the game. Michigan was in the red zone, threatening to make it a 2-possession game, and Jordan Williams took it all the way to the house for 6. From the San Antonio side, staying on the Brahma side of the field, I just want to say welcome to the 2025 season, Anthony McFarland and Kellen Mond. The Brahmas offense put up their best game of the season so far, thanks in large part to 2 of their best players having breakout games on Sunday. Under new offensive coordinator, Coach Pardee, Anthony McFarland, he was able to get loose on the ground. He went off for a big 29-yard run, and he finished the day with 7 carries for 54 yards, and even found himself on the receiving end of Kellen Mond's first professional touchdown pass. Speaking of Kellen Mond, as I mentioned before, he had the best game of his young career. He went 19-31 for 153 yards and a touchdown, 0 interceptions. I did want to repeat that, 0 interceptions. I just wonder if my friend, the host, who's a big Birmingham Stallions fan, can any of his QBs say that this week? Did they have a game where they threw no interceptions? Here's a spoiler, ladies and gentlemen, they can't. The Brahmas played well enough to win, but it was not to be, unfortunately. Social media star Donald De La Haye, better known as Destroying, he hit a 55-yard field goal earlier in the game, couldn't hit the potential game-time field goal to send the game to overtime. His 53-yard attempt went, in a phrase that Florida State fans are very familiar with, went wide left. Coach Pardee might be the coach of the future in San Antonio, though, despite the loss. Head coach Wade Phillips, like I mentioned earlier, was absent from the sideline due to illness, so Coach Pardee took over as the head man in charge. And I got to admit, the offense was clicking. The defense, they were all over the place. They were hitting Panthers in the mouth, generating turnovers, getting big plays, and seeing this team play like that with the new man in charge has to be a good thing if you're one of the executives of the United Football League, and potentially if you're Wade Phillips, if you were thinking like, hey, time's winding down. I don't know how much of this I have left. It looks like if you hand the team off to Coach Pardee, the San Antonio Brahmas will be in good hands. And now this is where I take off my analyst hat and I put on my DC Defenders hat. This weekend was the main event. You had the DC Defenders going on the road to take on the St. Louis Battlehawks. It was the highest rated game of the UFL season so far. It drew in an average of 967,000 viewers with a peak viewership of 1.4 million to go along with the 30,000 plus fans who packed the dome in St. Louis. They didn't just get to see the greatest rivalry. Why the boos? I'm sorry. I think that's coming from a team that's got a losing record. But the team, DC, they went on the road, and there was a ton of fans there in St. Louis. And not only did the fans get to see the greatest rivalry in the history of modern spring football, they also got to bear witness to the annihilation of the St. Louis Battlehawks, courtesy of my DC Defenders. Defend DC isn't just some catchy line that was created by our marketing team. It's a blueprint for DC Defender football. The defense, we got a new defensive coordinator, Greg Williams' son, took over, and he had that defense out there hunting in St. Louis. They knocked the Battlehawks around and upside down, and they laughed when they conquered and won. Man, it was a great game. Shout out to DC, especially my defense. St. Louis has a dynamic running back named Jacob Sailors. He's been running all up and down UFL teams this season. But this week, when he played the DC Defenders, really pretty much not only Jacob Sailors, but the entire Battlehawks running game, it was shut down. DC only gave up 45 yards on 16 total carries by the entire St. Louis offense. Plays were often blown up before they even had a chance to begin. And if a pass was completed, the receiver went down and he went down hard. Quarterback Manny Wilkins, to his credit, showed a lot of toughness. Despite finishing the game bruised and bloodied and beat up, he tried his best to keep the team in the game. It seemed like for every play that he made with his legs or every pass he completed to keep a drive alive, he took a vicious hit and turned the ball over. The DC Defender defense finished the day with 3 interceptions on Manny Wilkins. They sacked him 3 times, forced 2 fumbles, and limited the best offense in the league to just 173 total yards of offense, holding the Battlehawks to 4 of 14 on third down. That is DC Defender football. The team whose coach left them less than a week before the season started, the same team whose longtime defensive coordinator left them the day after the second game, you know, the ones who beat the reigning, defending 3-time spring football champions in week 1 is the same team that so many people are written off as being pretenders after they beat Memphis in week 2. That same team went on the road into St. Louis as 12.5-point underdogs and only went into that trap. They took over the St. Louis trap. Yes, that team, the DC Defenders, the same DC Defenders who are now the only undefeated team in all of spring football, 3-0, sitting atop the power rankings like we should be. We proved to the entire league that spring football runs through DC. This is our house, and you better start putting some respect on our name. Please and thank you. Now to get to some post-game news from the UFL. This one's a little bit personal for me. I mentioned earlier that Michigan quarterback Danny Etling is going to be out for the foreseeable future after he took a hard hit against San Antonio. So to add some extra depth to the quarterback room, the Panthers have signed former Oklahoma State quarterback Alan Bowman. Alan Bowman, he's like Matt Corral on steroids, like the best way I can describe it. He's going to put you in position to win a game, like when he outdueled 2025 draft prospect Dylan Gabriel. Alan Bowman outdueled him to become the last quarterback to ever win a Bedlam game between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. But also in that same season, he played very, very bad and was the main reason why we lost to South Alabama. So he has some good, he has some bad. He comes with a ton of experience, having played 7 years of big-time college football. So he definitely could be an asset to Michigan. And I really like this move on his part in a crowded quarterback class in 2025 where he might not have a lot of a lot of people attracted to his name and a lot of people knowing about him. He might not be on the radar just yet. If he goes into the UFL and gets a professional reps and looks good, he could find himself on an NFL roster going into training camp and potentially on somebody's practice squad going into the season. But that's it for week 3. Moving on to week 4, got some the schedule for you coming up here in the UFL. On Friday night, April 18th at 8 p.m. on Fox, it will be the Memphis Showboats going on the road to play the Michigan Panthers, who are starting to see a surge in attendance. They're putting more and more fans in the seats up in Ford Field, so we love to see that from Michigan. They're rolling. They're 2-1 right now, and they got a tough outing coming up against the Memphis Showboats. So it should be an interesting game there Friday night at 8 on Fox. Moving on to Saturday at 12:30 on ABC. We got the St. Louis Battlehawks going on the road to play the King of Spring, Luis Perez, and the Arlington Renegades. Can St. Louis bounce back after that tough loss to DC this past Sunday? And then from Arlington's point of view, can their offense get going consistently? Can they put up points? And from the defensive side of the ball, can you bear down and get tough in crunch time? Like when your team has needed you the most the last 2 weeks, you haven't really shown up. You let teams come back in the game, and you almost gave up a loss to one of the worst teams in the league. And then you unfortunately you gave up a touchdown to Matt Corral and the Stallions on a game where you really should have won last Friday night. So pretty interesting to see how both of those teams bounce back going into week 4. Next game up in week 4 is staying on Fox. It's going to be Saturday night, April 19th at 7. It's the reigning defending champion Birmingham Stallions going on the road to play the Houston Roughnecks. It's going to be interesting to see, how Birmingham's defense, they can continue to carry the load for this team while the offense figures it out. And this is going to be a huge test for Nolan Henderson. You're now the starting guy in Houston, and your first game as a starting quarterback is going to be against one of the best defensive lines in spring football. So if you can perform really well, not only can you resurrect this Houston Roughnecks team, but you putting yourself on the radar of NFL teams and could be on the roster next year. So good luck to Nolan Henderson. He's definitely going to need it Saturday night at 7 p.m. on Fox as they take on the Birmingham Stallions. And in the main event, Sunday, April the 20th at 5 p.m., it's the San Antonio Brahmas going to Audi Field, the best home field advantage in the United Football League, to take on the 3-0 undefeated Kings of the United Football League, the DC Defenders. Should be a good one. I know Cullen Mond had a good game last week. I know Anthony McFarland got going again, but you're going up against the best defense in all of spring football, the DC Defenders. We're going to shut that running game down. Cullen Mond is probably going to look like Matt Corral this week, have some good throws, but also have some really bad ones that could cost him the game. I got DC moving on to 4-0 this week after a test from the San Antonio Brahmas. But that's it for this week's edition of On the Mark. We will be back and better than ever for you next time, bringing you the latest and greatest in the United Football League in week 4. I'll have all the news and highlights ready to go for you. But until then, I'll see you next time. Have a good one.
On the Mark with Young Mark is brought to you by the Real to Sports Podcast.